This is Diane Murray at Southern Art Gallery, and today I am doing a simple painting for my beginners class, showing them how to set up a tracing. So I have my paper, and it's securely taped to the board. I have my graphite paper, and I have my photograph. Now, if I'm going to be tracing something that's quite linear like this, then I'm going to use a ruler to make sure that my horizon line is straight. And there's another, this is a beach, I'm guessing here. I do my printouts in black and white because it's less complicated to see the shapes, and also saves a fortune on printing. So I actually paint from my iPad. I used to paint from photographs, but primarily now it's with my iPad. By my iPad, I'm just tracing out the mountains in the background. This is a Nocturne, which means that it's a night painting. It's a wonderful, simple way to learn values, because the values are, you're painting with all the same colors here, the same one color. It's going to be ultramarine blue. So I'm just tracing that out. This is a stylus. It works beautifully for tracing. Let's see what we have. Now, whenever I do this, I make sure that the reference photo is completely attached to the paper, so that I don't get any surprises if I stop and check my drawing, which you should do, of course. It's entirely possible to do a whole tracing and then find out that you have had the paper on the wrong side. And if you do place it on the black shiny side, you will not get a transfer. So I love this tree. So I'm just tracing the tree. Now when I get into these branches, I have to be very careful to trace out the main branches. I'm not going to trace all the branches because you can easily add those later. But I want to get the main structure of the tree and the really dark areas and anything that's significant here. So, of course, if you're good at drawing, you can draw this yourself. You don't have to trace it. It's just easier when you're beginners to trace, because it's hard to learn all these things you're trying to learn at one time. Painting is complicated. Okay. So I just want to get these basic forms that are up in here. And if I over trace, it's going to look contrived. So I have to be very careful to only put in the major shapes that I'm seeing here. There's a lovely reflection right here that comes down in the water. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So we need some more detail in our tree. Do the main branches. And then you can go back when you do your detail and fill in all the little small branches. Another way you can do this is to just generally outline the shapes, the large shapes, and outline the edges so that you know where to stop your tree. Okay. Let's finish this. Get those darker areas in there. Okay. Let's do a little bit of this up here, just so we know that we've got all this going on here. We're only going to use 2 colors in this painting. We're going to use the ultramarine for everything in the background and the burnt sienna for the tree, and a combination of the two. So this really will simplify things for my students. Have it, there's our basic outline. And if you need to correct anything, all you have to do is take your pencil and draw anything that was left out of your tracing. Okay. And if I wanted to add branches now, that would be very easy to do with just a little wiggly motion. You just come in and be sure that everything stems directly from the tree itself. And it's nice to go ahead and add this so that you kind of have a roadmap of what you want to do. And this is just with a little delicate motion here. And I don't want the entire tree covered in. I want to leave some sky holes in here, which is important. I want to get these main branches in here too, which are also important. We have some coming out here. You just don't want to be too careful with this, but you do want to be, you don't want it to be consistent. So watch that. We tend to recreate the same symbols without being aware of it. So that's all I would do right there for right now. So there you go. And we'll mix up our paints and we will start painting this. Okay, I have my ultramarine blue and I have my burnt sienna ready to go. Clean water. And this is what we're painting right here. So I'm going to start with an overall wash, a light watery wash of ultramarine blue. And remember, when we do a wash, my board is slanted. I'm just going to go right down the page, catching that bead. And it's always going to be darker at the top. So as I come down, I'm going to add a little more water so that I get a gradiated wash. We're going to just go right through this entire painting. This is that Fabriano paper that's their student grade paper. It's 25% cotton. And it's not a bad paper for beginners. It's not great. I wouldn't do professional painting on this. Okay, so now it's getting a little darker right here. So we're going to go run this a little darker. And then there's a light spot, and then it gets darker again. Right here. Then it gets lighter, so we'll wash off our brush, add more water, take that wash all the way down, and it is darker at the bottom, so there's our first wash. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Just put some waves in here just to soften that a little bit. Okay, we're going to dry this. There. So if I go back into the paper like that, I'm going to have to re-wet everything because I'm going to get a hard line if I don't. So I'm just going over everything with the clear water. So if you have an uneven wash that you want to smooth out, just go back in and start your wash again and bring it all the way down to a stopping point, which would be probably, you could stop it here, or you could just come on down here and just make sure the whole thing is wet. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry and we'll be back. Okay, we're back. And as you can see from this photograph, hopefully, the sky is much darker at the zenith and it gets lighter toward the horizon line, and then it's lighter here and gets darker down there. So that's what we're going to do with our second layer. But we're going to wet it first, again, so that we don't have harsh lines. And I'm just going to have an even sheen on the paper, not too much water. So we don't want it buckling too much. So just enough to evenly coat the paper, and very lightly so I don't lift up the paint underneath, which actually doesn't usually happen in watercolor because it's the pigment actually soaks into the paper, so you usually don't have too much of a problem. It lifts a little bit, but not enough. So now I'm just going to smooth it out because it is buckling a little bit. And that is the problem with this inexpensive paper, is you have to deal with buckling, but it dries pretty flat. So you just have to be sure you don't have puddles anywhere where it buckles. So then we'll go straight in, and the brush I'm using is a large mop brush. This is the Da Vinci Casaneo. It is a synthetic squirrel brush and one of my favorite brushes. So I'm going to try to really push that pigment dark up at the top, and I'm going to let it migrate down. And remember, this is the sky, so it doesn't have to be a perfect wash. So then we're going to start getting a little lighter. I'm blotting my brush. A little more water. Nocturnes are very interesting paintings. They're you can do some really amazing effects in a nocturne painting. This is so much lighter here that we're just going to basically take clear water and go right here. But then it's going to get much darker on these mountains, which of course we'll put in later on drier paper. I like that little highlight right there. I'm going right through that tree, which is fine. All right, so now I'm going to do more of a gentler wash here. Then it's lighter, but then we're getting darker again. So I can go right into my pigment, make it stronger. So now we're getting more of the values that I'm seeing here. Okay, liking that better. So now we're going to dry that. Always dry between your layers, and that way you're less likely to overwork painting and mess it up. So one thing I see my students do is to keep working the painting until it's totally overworked, and then it's ruined. So it's better to do this gradually, to do these washes, let them dry, and then keep building as you go.